Hey there guys, Coach Shane here, and I want to talk to you about one of the most foundational movements that we have, and that is the squat. Whether it's an air squat, back squat, front squat, overhead squat, squatting technique is essential to moving well and moving safely. We squat every day in our life, whether it's sitting in a chair, getting off the couch, going to the bathroom, and as kids, you watch little kids squat, they squat perfectly, and then as we get older, we get a little more tight, less mobile. Squatting technique goes out the window a little bit. So what I want to do is break down a series here where we talk about what the squat looks like today. And the next, we'll be looking at some common faults that we have as we progress through this series, and then give you some practice things that you can do to improve on your squat. So today I just want to break down the squat for you, look at that proper technique, and then look at some things that we can improve along the way. So the first thing when we're squatting is our stance. Our feet should be hip, shoulder width apart. And that's going to a little bit differently, but our feet should be about hip, shoulder width apart. Some of us have longer legs, we might be a little bit wider, a little bit less mobile, and that's fine. Too narrow gets a little bit tough, so I'd like to be hip, shoulder width apart. Now, when I start, the first thing I want to start with is squeeze my glutes. What that does is that opens up my hips a little bit. When I squeeze my butt, that rotates my hips out. It gives me a little bit more stability and a better structure here as we go down for our squat. It turns our knees out a little bit. So I want to start with that tight glute squeeze to get my hips reset. So I'm in my squat position, butt tight, my feet are hip, shoulder width apart. Now I want to brace. Take that big breath, I engage my core. I'm ready to squat, whether it's an air squat, back squat, front squat, whatever that might be. Now, the first thing that moves in my squat is my hips. So I want those hips to move back and down, okay? So the first thing we'll practice here is just butt tight, tummy tight, my feet are hip, shoulder width apart, and I'm going to go back and down. You don't have to go all the way, back and down. So I'll have you practice that 3 to 5 times, just working on that hips back and down. Next thing, as we squat, we want to keep our chest up, our hips moving back and down, looking straight ahead, and keeping my chest up, and then drive back up. So again, my feet are hip, shoulder width apart, butt tight, I brace my core, my hips go back, down, keeping a nice flat back, and my knees are tracking out over my toes, and I drive back up, squeezing at the top. A cue I like to use is pretend that we have a piece of paper towel, big paper towel, on the ground, and we have that perforation down in the middle between our legs. we talked about that torque, that external rotation. I want to, as I set my hips back and down, I'm coming down. Notice I have my knees tracking out over my second toe. As I come up, I want to tear that paper towel apart. It keeps that good external rotation as I drive up. I want my foot in contact with the ground the whole time. So as I'm going down, my heel is on the ground as well. If you feel yourself coming up to your toes, we have a little bit of tightness there. So that's something we want to be aware of. We don't want to go to the depth right now where my heels start coming off the ground. Drive those hips back, and that's as far as I go. As I start feeling that, come right back up, and we'll slowly work greater depth with that. We want to keep those heels on the ground. Now, we talked about the knees a little bit. If you get too wide, and I'm squatting down, and as I come down, my knees come in here, then I want to bring my feet in a little bit and really focus on driving those knees out. Again, go into a depth that allows me to keep that. The next thing that we look at is that lumbar curve, that nice flat back. I want to stay engaged, nice and slow, and you'll find sometimes, for some people, get what we call that butt wink, where my hips drop down and I round my lower back. I want to avoid that. That gets dangerous when we have a little bit of load. So for back squatting and front squatting, it gets tough. So I want to find a spot where I can maintain that lumbar curve. So to review today, just the squat, and we'll get into some techniques down the road here. I want to start with my feet, hip, shoulder width apart. Squeeze my butt, brace my core. Then I shoot my hips back and down, keep my chest tall, eyes forward, knees checking out over the toes. As I stand back up, I'm tearing that paper towel and staying up tall, squeezing my butt at the top, locking out my hips and knees. We put all those together, practice slowly, maybe go to whether it's a medicine ball, a box, whatever that might be, to get that technique down. And next time we're going to address some of the faults that we find from the heels coming off the ground to loss of that lumbar curve or driving the knees forward. We'll have a few drills that we can work on to help you improve those things.